welcome on in to another edition of the Between the Hash Marks podcast. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend, colleague, mentor, and the purveyor of the Two Deep Zone, Mike Tanier. Michael, this was supposed to be a week where training camp gets underway, but of course, life seems to get in the way of that. And here we are on a Tuesday recording this podcast with some difficult news that needs to be addressed really on all fronts of the NFL world and the NFL community.
Yeah, we get into this job hoping to just be talking about touchdowns and position battles and quarterback controversies, et cetera. And we're going to do plenty of that as the weeks go on. But like several things in a row just happen in the NFL that kind of takes us out of our comfort zone and takes us out of like the good time element. And we should talk about them.
For sure. And it was supposed to be a week of hope and optimism across the league with training camps getting underway. And all of that was pierced by the sobering reality of this very uniquely American epidemic of gun violence and mass shootings coming for the NFL on Monday when a gunman casually walked into a Manhattan high rise that houses the league office, killed four people before ultimately turning the gun on himself. And Mike Deanna Rossini, good friend of ours of The Athletic, reports that an NFL employee named Craig Clementi was hospitalized after being struck in the back by a bullet just as he was on the phone trying to warn his colleagues and friends to stay safe and barricade themselves where they are within their office. And there's also reporting out now that the gunman had targeted the NFL offices specifically and left a note citing the league's ongoing issues with CTE and concussions as a motivation before ultimately shooting himself in the chest, as some former NFL players have done to preserve their brains for science. And this isn't the first time that the NFL has been touched by gun violence, because you'll remember there was the shooting incident 2 years ago at the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade.
Yeah.
But it's just yet another reminder of the risk that we all take in this country every time we leave our homes and the unprecedented vigilance that life in America now requires. It shouldn't be normal, but it has become our new normal. We shouldn't have to look over our shoulder every time we walk into the grocery store or search for the nearest exit every time we walk in and sit down in a movie theater or learn how to barricade ourselves in our office doors or in our classrooms with the heaviest furniture we can find as quickly as possible. But unfortunately, there are few things that are more uniquely American than gun violence and mass shootings. And this is just another reminder that even the NFL, even this behemoth of a business, even this cultural icon
Mhm.
isn't insulated from an incident like this coming home to roost.
Right. And when you hear the story of Clemente, on the phone, giving the safety procedures to other people, and then, wind up getting shot. I mean, you and I are in this place. Where does your mind go? Who do you think of?
Oh, immediately it went to my wife and your wife, but both
Yeah.
teachers. My wife is in a middle school setting, so there's a little bit more risk there. I believe your wife is a high
Right.
school teacher as well, so there's an inherent risk there. I have, my daughter is going into second grade, and your heart skips a beat every morning when you put her on the school bus. This is just the reality and the fear that we all kind of have to grapple with these mass shootings continuing to be an issue and a plague on American society.
Right. And your wife, my oldest son now, and me for many years of my career in the classroom. I was a teacher in the classroom during Columbine, during 9/11. I think I had just left before Sandy Hook through constant shootings. I've done all the possible protocols and possible drills that you discuss, like barricades and bringing people to the back of the class and normalizing this to the degree that all of our children go through life saying, "Yeah, that well, this is what the alert is, and this is what you do," and acting like this is normal. And yeah, as a teacher and as anyone, I guess, a citizen, but like as a loved one of a teacher, your heart skips a beat. You always feel like you're rolling a dice to a little bit, and then it becomes this low-lying thing that you start to almost assume. It's like, well, this is what we have to live with. And now with the NFL, yeah, it's the same thing. It's like, well, I guess we have to live in a world where maybe gun violence could break out during the Super Bowl parade last year, like you said, could happen at league headquarters, anything. I reject that. We should not have to live like this.
And that's I think what's most frustrating for me as an American citizen, a husband to a teacher, a father to young children, a journalist. I mean, we can't forget the Capitol Gazette shooting
Right.
in the middle of a newsroom could very well have been you and I doing our work, at our office, at our desk, at our cubicle, and
Mhm.
a mass shooting occurs in the office as it did at the NFL. It's a scourge on American life. It is a great disappointment of mine in our system of governance that we can't pass sensible gun control measures to make life even a fraction safer. And people always push back and say, well, how are you going to stop every mass shooting? Or, if you take away the guns, somebody's going to use a car or use a knife. Okay, make it more difficult. Just make
Right.
it more difficult inch by inch to these things happening. Do what you can to try to prevent them, because not trying, Mike, is what leads us to recording this on July 29th, which, if you look back on the course of this year, it's the 210th day of the year.
Uh-huh.
198 people have been killed so far as of this moment, 883 people injured in 253 mass shootings on the 210th day of the year here in America. And again, it seems like in today's news cycle, the 24-hour news cycle, that there's a mass shooting in a school. It's a big story for an hour or two, and then it's wiped off the pages. Or, we're on to the next incident, the next tragedy, the next controversy. Maybe the NFL having to face this, maybe it's a conversation starter for some people, but I just fear that it is once again going to be an example of a tragedy happens and too quickly we just turn the page without meaningful action.
And the NFL's idea of meaningful action being like, well, let's make the stadium lines longer to get in, and make you have to go through four more searches or things like that, when this has nothing to do with that. And the not totally tangential to this is the CTE issue, and that this individual who was a high school football player, who believed that CTE might have contributed to this individual's what sounds like documented mental health concerns, and that may be true. That's certainly possible. Again, I was a teacher during Columbine, and I remember that the problem was black trench coats
Yeah.
and Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal, and there's always a thing, or it's, well, it's undiagnosed mental illness, or it's this or it's that. There is a common denominator. It is guns, 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 guns. What's frustrating now is it's hard to even go out in the street and protest against guns, because you have to get in line behind the protest for the other thing, and the protest for the other thing, and the protest for the other thing. This is a space at least to, like, just talk about the outrage and the anguish and the frustration, because we have the excuse right now, almost like, well, it's an NFL story, so we can talk about these things.
Right.
And that's what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about, oh, well, this is a concussion thing, and we need to shift this over to the concussion lane and things like that. That's what you do every time there's a shooting and you don't want to talk about guns. You shift it. The people who are radically pro guns look for any shift they can. I'm not going to go for the shift this time.
And there should be a shift, because even if mental health played a role in this specific incident or other incidents, this is a microcosm of the bigger problem, because one of the first victims of this shooting, according to multiple reports, was a security guard in the entryway in the lobby of the building, just hung up the phone on a FaceTime call with his wife and his young child, and was shot on the spot. Now, if guns weren't the issue, and it was someone with a knife, it was someone with some other weapon that isn't as capable of producing mass death on demand, perhaps that individual, that law enforcement officer, is still with us today, or a hero in the building might be more opportunistic and able to tackle him, to stop him, prevent him, slow him, than they are with him carrying in a military grade assault rifle into the building to create and enact mass violence. Again, I know it's a difficult conversation, but it's a conversation today after this incident that I think it's worth shining a light on the broader issues within society, the fact that there are so few safe spaces in this country right now, that even the NFL is being directly affected by this. Roger Goodell sent out a memo to employees in New York about the grief counselors on location,
Right.
instructing people to work from home. Understandable if they want to take the day off, which should be the norm after going through a trauma like this. But the NFL is forced to react. There's going to be added security at that building. But I think that it's past time that leadership in this country takes a more active role to figuring out how to slow this down, solve this problem, or at least slow the ability for people to carry out incidents like this.
Agreed. And I'm kind of tired of, again, decades in education hearing, and the grief counselors are coming. Like they're the hardest working people in show business in America these days, because it's like, oh well, we stopped trying to solve the problem, but we have these extra people to come in to try and help you deal with it and give you one day off. And by the way, the teachers don't get the day off. It's like the kids or anyone else who gets the day off. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of the barn door swinging open and then running in to close it.
And then the other issue is, you were a teacher during Combine. I was a sixth grade student,
Oh
so I was
gosh.
living this reality when it first happened.
Hmm.
I remember very vividly sitting around in the classroom in the circle with the teacher, with everybody in the classroom, openly discussing what happened at Columbine, and there was the fear of copycat incidents, of
Yep.
copycat shootings. And in our school, there was a list that was found a few days later that turned out to be innocuous, but everybody thought that it might have been a list to carry out a similar crime. And you think about the reason why we haven't mentioned the shooter's name in this conversation, and we won't.
Hmm.
The last thing you want to do is publicize the person who carried out this act of violence, because it encourages others to go out and get their 12 minutes of fame, 15 minutes of fame by enacting as a similar shooting,
Although, gosh, when there's 200 and some of them a year, no one gets famous anymore. I mean,
right?
that's it. But I mean, I could tell you stories from post Columbine of how it was in the teacher's lounge and things like that. It's almost like I wish for us to be in a more innocent world where it's like we're all going to try to take action. But the action that we took back then wasn't, let's say this is offensive to us as a society. The, these guns, we are killing children. That wasn't the action we took. The action was deflect, deny, victim blame, use this as an opportunity to sell security systems to schools, to arm security guards in schools, to put metal detectors in schools. I'm sure that there'll be a banner industry at that building for the NFL and KPMG and everybody is in having extra security. Wow, you feel better now. You're living within a penitentiary system to feel safe. Is that really how we're supposed to live as Americans?
And then when you step out of that bubble and you step into the grocery store, or you go
Yes.
to see a movie, or you
Yes.
drop your child off at school, or you kiss your wife goodbye before she goes to work in a school the next morning, or you go to run an errand, you're no longer within that fortress. and
Right.
and and the police state mentality of how to solve this problem, it doesn't solve the problem. It's the guns. When you look at how other developed nations around the world have handled this issue, it's the guns, it's the guns, it's the guns.
Yep. Yep.
And unfortunately, Mike, the news on the field, or close to the field, it wasn't that much more encouraging, or hasn't been that much more encouraging this week. I'm not even sure how to transition into this
Let's
conversation,
just
but
transition out of the gun conversation. There's no like smooth. Speaking of other things, but go on. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you got into this a little bit early on in walkthrough, which was a tremendous column overall. But the situation in Las Vegas with the Raiders and what led to Christian Wilkins' release, there are so many layers to this onion. I just want to put it to you: where to go to first, where you have a former first round pick, one of the highest paid free agents at his position in his free agent class, not once but twice,
Hmm.
loses his job, gets released, and there's all kinds of swirling reporting about what led to the Raiders moving on
Hmm.
from a player coming back from an injury who, if healthy, would have been a pivotal contributor along that defensive line.
There's a lot to it, and the first one is um, him choosing to not have foot surgery,
Yeah.
and him choosing not to have foot surgery, leading to a voiding of guarantees in his contracts. And there's layers to that that we can pick at. Um, and then but then the release appears to be involve a incident that involves dudes kissing dudes on the head in the locker room or in the facility somewhere. Wilkins kissing a teammate. And that left a lot of us gaping. People were joking about Schefter trying to talk about this. And it's like Schefter's trying to talk about this to McAfee. And it's like the most macho men in the world, and their brains are actually like exploding here. But it's not easy to talk to when you're trying to be serious and you're trying to like be reflective of the. This could be anything from like a Richie Incognito bullying situation where this guy is going around and he's like belittling his teammates and making them uncomfortable on purpose. To the flip side of this is him joking around with his buddies and you kiss somebody on the head and suddenly they have a gay homophobic panic, like a boy cooties
Yeah.
weird panic and go so far up into the stratosphere in terms of their discomfort for this that they run the human resources. And then human resources, it's been a while since we've worked in a normal workplace. Human resources is not a guillotine in real life. Human resources is we're going to call you in, have meetings, bring higher management in, bring your union rep in, talk about a possible suspension, talk about a possible you have to watch the goofy video about harassment, whatever. That's not how the Raiders human resources. The resources guy is apparently the Grim Reaper and just cuts you immediately. And then we're still trying to avoid Wilkins's bonuses. And again, there's layers. There's like a socio
So many.
political layer to this, and then there's sort of a union layer to this, and there's a football layer to this, unless we just got rid of a really good guy in terms of being on a player, etc. And it's hard to unpack this, but I guess we're gonna try.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth trying to unpack here because yeah, and I have to offer up a mea culpa on this one a little bit myself because yesterday I admittedly stepped away from the desk for a half hour to do something else, clear my head, and I come back to text messages from people inside the league, from you, trying to figure out what exactly happened with Christian Wilkins. And of course, my reaction was to go to social media. And in this rush for all of us to have a take on everything that happens, which has become the norm in our industry and in our business, I think I took a little bit of a misstep because I posted across social media that if Christian Wilkins is healthy, that some team is going to get one heck of a contributor to their defensive line because somebody couldn't take a joke. And I think that that was a little bit too flippant, a little bit too tongue in cheek on my part because we don't know the severity of what happened in the locker room. This could very well be a Richie Incognito level bullying, hazing incident, which you alluded to. But
Right.
but the bigger picture is we as a society, regardless of who the victim is, we need to take sexual assault and sexual harassment more seriously in this country. It's an issue that I care deeply about. But in the moment, I was a little too flippant, you trying to react to the news of the day. And for that, I apologize to anybody who might have been offended. But it's just one of those things where it's so out of the blue. You don't hear about this type of story in the league leading to a team releasing a former first round pick after something like this, that it makes you wonder, as just that layer of the onion, was this just the tip of that particular iceberg?
And that's where we start running into dead ends, and we're not in the locker room every day. Nobody, I mean, maybe there's somebody that embedded in knowing what's going on there. Josiah Anderson was reporting on it last week and has pointed out that no one in the league seems to think there's any documentation by the Raiders. Forget the kissing or the possible bullying or harassment or whatever that is. There's no documentation of them saying that they are displeased with his choice to not undergo the foot surgery. So
Right.
you, from an organizational control standpoint, this is bad because like the worst case scenario we're looking at is that Christian Wilkins was like, I have a foot injury. I'm just going to take the next 2 years off on the dime. Ha ha ha. See if I can get away with that. Oh, and then when I'm running around the locker room, I'm going to be this kind of jerkwad who like touches people and appropriately makes them uncomfortable, gets my teammates so pissed off that they don't do like the usual locker room thing and like come back at me, but or even run to the coaches, but run the human resources. If that's the case, if this is some sort of persistent thing, and there's no paper trail about it. On the more serious end, it means like the Raiders have no control over anything and they're just letting all hell break loose. On the dollars and cents thing, good luck going to an arbiter and saying, well, we those guarantees are void and we want our money back. Good luck. We didn't document anything. There's no evidence that anything happened except that we got mad about the guy not getting foot surgery. And then while we were mad at him, we were waiting for him to do something wrong, and he gave us an excuse. So
43 tackles for loss, 22 and a half sacks in his career. And you look at a guy who was chosen number 13 overall back in 2019. There isn't an NFL GM or an NFL head coach who hasn't met a former first round pick that they don't instantly fall in love with, right? I
right.
mean, that's just the way that that business operates. Every coach, every general manager, every coordinator, they believe they can be the team, the coach, the situation to bring out the best and the most potential out of a guy with a first round pedigree. I know we're barely 24 hours into him being released, but there aren't exactly teams beating down the door to
Mhm.
sign him. So it makes you wonder, in this void of information, what really went on behind the scenes that
Yeah.
led to this. And as far as trying to claw back the incentives, claw back the guaranteed money,
Yeah.
Mike, this makes me wonder if this isn't just a broader sign depending on how the NFLPA reacts to this, of
Hmm.
a union in turmoil based on everything we've seen out of the NFLPA over the past 10 days, over the past several months, where that union, there are some real question marks about where the NFLPA is heading into what could prove to be a really pivotal collective bargaining agreement negotiation a couple years down the line.
Yeah, the union's in chaos. Now, that shouldn't impact this because this is a matter of you call in one of your counsels. I don't think it has to be one of the good counsels. It could be the junior lawyer. You sit them down, you say, and you pretty much say, okay, here's the timeline of events. The Raiders restructure um, Wilkins in March like 19th. They restructure him guaranteeing money in March. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, they come to him and say, you should be having surgery. And he says, no. Then you
Right.
void the contract, those guarantees in April, but you keep him on the team. Then you bring him into the facility injured, and then he mysteriously gets fired a couple days after signing the grievance to get the uh, yeah, to try and get back his guarantee. Tell me this isn't putative, and tell me this isn't simply a caveat emptor by a team that wants takesy backsies because they didn't do their due diligence to see what the health situation of this player was. I don't believe there's any language in the contract saying you have to have the precise medical procedures that the team tells you to have. If there isn't, that's an open and shut case. If there isn't, then this is over. So there are big union issues. Obviously, this should be like whatever lawyer is lying around, get in there, sit next to Wilkins. Mark Davis is on the other side, like, oh, you kissed another guy, or whatever. Mark Davis, goofy ass thing gonna come out of his mouth, and arbiter say you're being cheap. Pay the man the money you said you were going to pay the man a couple of days before you changed your mind.
I'm not so sure that I've ever seen a situation like this,
No.
where a team is trying to claw back incentives and bonus money and guaranteed money over an injury. You had Jerry Jones come out and basically lambast his players and guilt them for getting injured after signing them to
Yes.
long-term deals last week. Now you have the Raiders trying to claw back money. I've just never seen anything like this go down, especially surrounding a former first round pick.
Yeah.
And it's almost like what actually behooved them moving on? Was it whatever is going on with
Right.
Christian Wilkins, the person, or
Mm-hmm.
was it this, anger, disappointment, frustration about him not getting foot surgery and then not rehabbing at the facility, choosing to do so at his own pace on his own? Something just isn't adding up here. And I think that nobody is being done any great service in this information vacuum because it leads to wild and rampant speculation. It
Right.
leads to criticism that might be warranted, but might not be. And I do wonder if we're going to hear more what the next layer of this onion for this story is going to be.
And let's take the assumption right now that the person who got kissed, the victim of this what do you call it, human resources incident, he was embarrassed by this for whatever reason. You're allowed to be embarrassed by something. If the Raiders care about this particular employee, they would like this to quietly go away. And it quietly
Yeah.
goes away a lot more quickly if you just say, you know what, we're just going to pay that bonus money out. It was caveat emptor, and we're on the football. But while we still have to pull at these threads and dangle at these threads, and Wilkins is out there as a free agent who has this miasma around him of whether or not he's still hurt, whether he was malingering on the injury, whether he's a clubhouse poison of some kind. You're not doing for football operations and this particular individual any services by making this a thing that can be talked about on not just here, but like on the McAfee show and in other places like that.
For sure. And one thing that I think needs to be more talked about is, cancer prevention screenings. And
Yeah.
there was a unfortunate, but also fortunate because of the size of his platform. Deion Sanders comes out and basically not only reveals his scare, his diagnosis, his win in the battle over bladder cancer, but shines a light on the importance and the value of going to your annual screenings and getting checked up and being made sure and reaffirm that you're doing okay and that you're healthy and avoiding cancer and all these things. But Coach Prime overcoming a pretty big health scare.
You talk about first of all, you talk about flippant. Yeah, I do a lot of Coach Prime jokes. And I was actually scrubbing some from my walkthrough on Sunday night when I realized like this sounds like I didn't know it was happening, but I heard the press conference was being scheduled. That like I heard Dion Jr., the son who doesn't play football, talking a lot about how much time he spent around with his dad and everything. Okay, this is definitely a real thing that was going on here. So I'm glad I scrubbed those. But like, you recognize that while Dion can be this sort of media caricature person on one end, it's a real dude on the other end. And for an old guy who's only a couple years younger than Prime Time, who was the absolute not just the fit of health, but the fit of cool for years and years and years. And for Gen Xers, it's still kind of like a an avatar of cool as
Yeah.
we try to age into something that's not embarrassing. I mean, I'm glad he's okay. It's terrifying to see what he has gone through. It is a little bit of a wake up call, but it's good to hear him out there being this very blunt, very frank person talking about illnesses of the penis and the reproductive and the kidneys and things like that most of us are stigmatized. We don't want to talk about, and he's creating an opportunity to have that conversation.
For sure. And you talk about the avatar of cool, it's not just for Gen X. I mean, you think about the recruiting classes that he's had at the University of Colorado and churning out, top draft pick Travis Hunter. You talk about Shador Sanders' college career. You talk about what he's trying to build there at Colorado. Obviously, still really cool to have Deion Sanders sit in your living room with
Yeah.
the recruiting pitches, but almost more valuable for him to shine a light on the importance of the conversation with your doctor and to not shy away from something that might be brewing under the surface or might be dealing with but you don't want to face head on. Maybe you're worried too, or maybe there's a stigma that you're dealing with, or you don't want to fight through to get the diagnosis. Even one of my wife's very close friends, a woman in her early 30s, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And recently, after over a year of treatment and fighting, she's thankfully in remission. But this is a disease that comes for all ages and all age brackets, walks of life, races, genders. And for Coach Prime to be out there and talking so openly about it, it's just another step in the right direction for people to realize, okay, maybe I should go talk to my doctor about that.
Yeah, in fact, give me 1 second. One moment. I'll be right back. Yeah, again, as somebody his age, I did go to the doctor's, got a full screening a couple of months ago, but procrastinated a little bit um, on the colon guard.
Oh, there
Okay,
you go.
still on the box. They've been sitting here for a month, because you don't want to do it.
Right.
You definitely don't want to have the colonoscopy screening, which is rather invasive, but you're not necessarily wanting to grab this thing and go into the bathroom and see what it entails and what you're going to have to reach into and what you're going to get your colon screened, especially if you're about 45 or older. And as soon as we're done, I'm going to go take care of this.
I'm glad you are.
Are you
Former colleague, no, in all
go?
seriousness, former colleague and eventually one of my bosses at 97.5, The Fanatic in Philadelphia, Jason Martinez, also very involved as one of the announcers on the Philadelphia Flyers broadcast team.
Hmm.
He's going through the fight for his life
Wow.
with colon cancer. And he's, I believe, a year down the line of treatments, multiple rounds of chemotherapy,
Hmm.
radiation. NHL.com did a profile on him a month or two ago, the battle that he's gone through. And the takeaway is get your screening, get it done. So, friend to friend, brother to brother, I'm glad that you're taking this step to just get the screening done, get it checked. You hope for a clean bill of health, and you put it out of mind until the next round.
And rest assured, I'm waiting until after the podcast to do so. Gotta have a little bit of fun with this. You gotta have a little bit of lightheartedness. You have to laugh sometimes to keep from getting that frustrated, anxious feeling not that knots up in your colon.
Probably the smart way to handle things. And we are going to talk a little bit of football a little bit later on. I promise. We're going to be joined by Cameron Lynch, former Los Angeles Rams linebacker, Tampa Bay Buccaneers linebacker, doing some really cool things in his life after football. And if you read Four Downs on Monday, I had a really fascinating conversation with all pro safety Jordan Poyer,
Yeah.
former Miami Dolphin, former Buffalo Bill. He's in the throes of mulling retirement. He told me point blank that if the Buffalo Bills call, they're the only situation that he would return to, the only place he would go, that it would be cool to finish what he and the Bills started. But otherwise, if that phone doesn't ring, he's riding off into the sunset, and he's building
Mhm.
a pretty cool sunset for himself and others.
Yeah, I read that, and he's going for like sort of the whole holistic health approach. including the fact that he's doing some Aaron Rodgers type things. That when Aaron Rodgers does them, we do the joke about them. But like we again, like you joke about these guys because they're a caricature of themselves sometimes. That doesn't mean some of the things that they might be into might not be good for you or worth exploring or helpful to somebody at that pivot point in their career where they're transitioning from being this millionaire athlete in the limelight to somebody who has to, be a parent, be a caregiver, be a spouse, etc.
Right. And Jordan Poyer has fought through some really intense demons in his life. He's been really open about his battle with alcoholism. I
Hmm.
remember he wrote the column in Players Tribune a few years ago about, overcoming, those issues in his life. And in our conversation this past week, the role of the plant-based medicine that
Yeah.
he's talked about. It's one thing to joke about Aaron Rodgers going on an ayahuasca retreat to figure
Yeah.
out whether or not he should play football or not. It's
Right.
another to hear a guy talk about the impact of these medicines and these approaches on his family, on his life, on his mental health, on his mindset, and how he's trying to help others on a journey to be the best version of themselves. Very different points of view, very different perspectives on the same thing. Now, holistic medicine might not be for everyone, but the fact that he's diving in with both feet to not only promote this because it's helped him so significantly, be with the mindset of helping others, I found that pretty commendable and pretty admirable for a guy who has made a career out of being a football player. Now he's looking for a greater purpose.
It takes a lot for these guys to be honest about that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Because we will make fun of Aaron Rodgers, and it's like, oh, we're all supposed to be tough guys and drinking 30 packs, and they're supposed to be eating steak and lifting weights. And yeah, my personal like comfort with ayahuasca and things like that, that's always like a little bit out on the fringe. But when you start talking about meditation, you start talking about yoga, you start talking about, I hate the word mindfulness, but these things that like that help.
The deep breathing exercises that he was talking about. Yeah.
I'll tell you, share you a true story, and this does not involve ayahuasca or pooping, which seems to be coming up a lot for some reason. You keep bringing it up. I was donating blood last week. Showed up, my blood pressure was too high. Okay, it can't be the systolic can't be over 100 or something like that. I've been denied in the past. I am on and off medication for high blood pressure. She's like, I'm coming back in 3 minutes. We're going to take it again. I did the breathing exercise, tactical breathing exercise, something I've learned in the past as a anxiety, depression, a support, to calm those things down. You can get apps for it, etc. Did the tactical 5 second, 5 second, 5 second, 5 second breathing for 3 minutes. She came down. She came back, took my blood pressure. It was systolic was down to 80.
Wow.
I was able to donate
Wow.
4 to 5 minutes of just going 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just doing that was able to have like a real physiological effect on your body. Now, if it's going to have that physiological effect on your body, it's going to have an effect on your mind. It's going to have an effect on your mood. And if that's what that simple breathing exercise can do, what happens if changing an exercise regimen? What happens with a meditation regimen, a yoga regimen? And yeah, the tea again that kind of scares me. There are things like there are cannabis-based things that are available widely now that can help, that can help your mood, help put you in a better headspace for to dealing with things. And I'm glad somebody like Poyer is exploring them.
Yeah, and I think that reinforces what Poyer was talking about with these deep breathing exercises, the power of your breath, not just you able to lower your systolic blood pressure that
Yeah.
quickly, that effectively, that significantly, but he talked about how athletes will, before games, use those exercises before key drives on the sideline, go through breathing exercises to help them get into what he called the flow state, which is what you and I might have called getting into the zone back in the
Right.
day, when we were playing. And it's a real physiological response just to the power of your breath. And I found it interesting, I found it deeply fascinating, and I think it's really interesting and really commendable that as he's looking ahead to that next chapter of his life, it's with a goal in mind of helping other people discover what people like you and him have already found your way into.
That's neat. Yeah, it's like that mindset of being fierce and focused.
Right.
Because sometimes you can be fierce and completely unfocused, and sometimes you think you're focused, but you're actually in this kind of nervous fight or flight type state. And we talk about the breathing exercises. A lot of this stuff has been studied by the military, is used by the military. This is not so far out in the woo-woo silence or some kind of weird lefty thing or things like that. This is stuff that like every day free cost free, whatever, can be like the start of putting you in a position to journey to something where you're more comfortable with yourself, better to the people around you, better to yourself.
And he said that again, he reiterated the only way he's coming back to football is if Buffalo called him. And I
Yeah.
asked him point blank, he was in Miami for a year. It didn't go the way that he necessarily would have hoped. It certainly didn't go the way that Miami expected it to as a team last year. And I said, what makes the Bills so special? And he said, quote, Buffalo has something special about it. Obviously, 17 taking the snaps, but those guys play for each other. They play hard. They're tough to beat, especially in the wintertime. Teams going out there in the wintertime in the elements, it's going to be a fun team to watch this year. And he's super excited, especially for Josh Allen, unquote. The Bills are one of those teams where it just feels like, Mike, they went in the offseason, they bolstered the defensive line, they followed the Eagles blueprint a little bit, they have the MVP. It seems like they might be one of those teams that this could be the year, the situation, the time. The timing might be right for them to break through that glass ceiling.
Yeah, I love when people talk about the culture. That is the culture. And part of the
Yeah.
culture is the continuity of the players themselves. Part of it is what's built. Part of it is success begetting success, so to speak. The Dolphins don't have that culture. The Bills clearly do, guys like Poyer. I hate talking about the Bills in July because we know we will be talking about the Bills on January 20th or whatever. We know we
Yeah.
will be talking about them. There's no question that they're going to be there deep in the playoffs. And nothing they do until then can convince us that it'll be different this time. That's what's sort of frustrating about that team. It's like I will watch them win games 41-10 and be like, of course, the Bills won 41-10. Do you think they'll win the Super Bowl? I've got to see them out there in the snow in Arrowhead or Buffalo or Baltimore or a team that surprises us at that time. That's why I hate talking about them this time of year. They are also having a little bit of an injury crunch, so his phone could ring because from what I've been
Yeah.
seeing.
Oh, no doubt, especially on the back end of that defense. And two teams that could be in the mix on the other side of the bracket are the Rams and the Buccaneers. That's why I'm so excited to talk to Cam Lynch and pick his brain a little bit. Cam, how you doing, my friend?
Doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me. And nice to finally connect here on the podcast.
Oh, happy to have you. Great to connect. Great to talk some football with you. You've done it at the highest level, and you're doing some pretty incredible things in your life after football. Working with Visa, I've seen you making the rounds on Wall Street. You've popped up on CNBC and on the background of the TVs here in the command center. During the middle of the week. Tell me what you have going on and a day in the life, if you will, in Cam Lynch, Wall Street superstar.
Yeah. So yeah, working at Visa, which is great, in the payment space, and then currently doing some content strategy for the team. So the world of podcasting, creating content, that's in my wheelhouse. Now the big thing is creators. You know what I mean? Creators are a big part of people's businesses, and when it comes to pushing a brand and elevating that. So that's been really cool to dive into that space. Being at Visa, big payments company, and then outside of that, jumping into real estate as well. So using some of those earnings from football to deploy those finances and to get some property, right? Build up the equity and wealth. So that's kind of what's cooking on my end. Living the married life as well. So being of service, to my partner each and every day. So life has been great. Can't complain.
So tell me about the role with Visa, because you're working with some of the top athletes across the sports world and obviously leveraging some of your connections from your time in the NFL and the relationships you built along the way. How did that come about? And what's the most rewarding aspect of that work for you?
Yeah. So we started at Visa through a program for former athletes. So it's called the Champions Program, and so through that, I was able to join the sponsorship team, and through that sponsorship team, work with the NFL since Visa's a major sponsor of that. And so, yeah, like you mentioned, working with the Christian McCaffreys, Visa's working with Christian, of course, the 49ers as well. And one of the most rewarding things that we've done is we've worked with his nonprofit, and so his nonprofit leans more into the gaming space and kids in some of the hospitals and make sure they had gaming consoles. And so we did a great activation with him. We had a small business owner design his cleat, right, for My Cause My Cleats Week, and those donations went to his nonprofit, which was cool, the Christian McCaffrey Foundation. So really leaning into the business side of the NFL and serving some of the players that I played against, right? I played at the Buccaneers, so I played against Christian McCaffrey in the NFC South Division. So it's just really cool not only to line up across these guys on the football field, but also line up with these guys when it comes to business at Visa. So it's been really a really awesome experience, and hope to do more.
And you mentioned Christian, and obviously you guys had some battles when he was in Carolina, and now you see him looking to come back from the injuries from a year ago. What makes him special? Because you start naming off the top running backs in the NFL. Of course, you have your Saquon Barkleys. You know, you can talk about Josh Jacobs winning the rushing title in a big year in Green Bay, his first year with the Packers. But Christian McCaffrey's name is in that upper echelon elite of the elite. What makes him special as a back and as a player?
Yeah, he can do it all. I think it was a year that he won, was it offensive MVP? He got onto the Madden cover. He had like a throwing touchdown, a running touchdown, and a
Yeah.
catching touchdown all in the same game. I feel like that was against the Rams, but I think he can just do it all. He's a triple threat. And so, as a linebacker, when you prepare against an athlete like that, it takes two, right? Like you're gonna let your linebackers know, your buddies know, or even the defensive lineman, like, hey, if this guy releases, like I need you to get a hand on him. And so I think when it comes to athletes that are the best of the best, it takes more than one to cover that person or really to game plan for them. And so he can do it all. And then also off the field, we talk about what he does for his nonprofit, some of the things he does for Visa and the content that he creates. He's a well-rounded individual. He's a family man. I think he just had his first child and everything like that. And so it's just cool to see athletes take the success on the field and translate it to off the field. So that's what makes him so dynamic.
And just, you know, switching gears to football here, you know, one of your former teams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've perennially been built on defense, a dominant defense, kind of adopting Todd Bowles' mentality as a head coach, formerly a defensive coordinator. You know, there's a lot of buzz about Baker Mayfield as a sleeper MVP candidate. They've done a nice job with, you know, the likes of Jalen McMillan and, of course, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, all the weapons they've put around him. But when you talk about that defense and you talk about Todd Bowles, Cam, would you say this is close to a make or break year for Bowles going into this season in Tampa?
I know it's funny looking at it because I looked up some of the stats and everything like that before the show, and I saw that he's been to the playoffs in the past 3 years. Right, every time he's been a head coach, he's been to the playoffs. He's won the division each year, and so that's hard to pass up. Right, I mean, we can look for another head coach to replace Todd Bowles. How much better will you get than that? I mean, of course, I know Todd's been losing in the first round of the playoffs since he's been there. But at the end of the day, he's winning the division. I think we look at success. Like, what does a successful team look like? The championship is number one, right? We had Tom Brady. We're able to win a championship. Right now, we don't have Tom Brady, but we have Baker Mayfield, and he's doing a good job of orchestrating the offense. I think was it Mike Evans had 1,000 yards last year. It was epic, right? Coming back from an injury and then getting to that 1,000 yard mark. Bucky ran for 1,000 yards plus, and then Baker threw for 4,000 yards, 4,500 yards, which is third in the league. So I think at the end of the day, he's doing a great job on the offensive side. I know Liam Cohen left, and Josh Grizzard is leading that offense, but um, I feel like Todd Bowles is doing a great job of having successful seasons. A championship is the most successful that you can have, but he's having successful seasons, and I think we need to give someone like him a chance, especially when it comes to the brown and black head coaches. Right? I think the time frame is a little bit shorter, and so I think within the time that he has been a head coach, he's done a great job. So I don't think this is a make or break year. The defense, I would say though, Matt, he's known as a specialist on the defensive side. I think the defense is going to have to apply some pressure, create some turnovers to help his case out.
And of course, the Buccaneers signed both Jason Licht, the GM, and Todd Bowles to a 3-year extension, you know, going into the season. So there is some runway there for Bowles, for this group that's done such a great job building a consistent contender. What's it going to take for Tampa to get over the top? You talk about winning the division every year, going to the playoffs where the success has been a little harder to come by. How do the Buccaneers get over that hump? How do they climb into that Super Bowl tier in the NFC?
Yeah, I think it's the defense. The defense has to create some of the turnovers, get the ball back to Baker Mayfield. I know Levante David is back. Thank God. I think the Buccaneers defense has a chance when Levante is playing football. And then also when the Buccaneers stay healthy, Matt, I'm here in Tampa right now and it's hitting 100 degrees each day. And so I imagine that wear and tear takes a toll on the bodies of the players, especially as the season continues. And so I know the guys are going to be happy when the bye week comes, right? So after the bye week, they can get some rest after training camp and go on a run like they did last year. But what I would say is the defense is going to have to get some turnovers. That's going to be a big key. And then, of course, the offense continue to click on every cylinder. Make sure that Mike Evans has his 1,000-yard season. Bucky Irvin, same thing, and really just repeat. And I know Tristan Wirfs right now; he's working through an injury, so making sure that Tristan is healthy as well. Baker doesn't do all that unless Tristan Wirfs is healthy and making sure he's protecting him. So I would like to see the defense step things up on this year. We drafted some corners and a lot of guys on the defensive side. So I think we're primed to get that done for the Buccaneers.
And one of the big offseason signings that flew under the radar just a little bit because it was only a 1 year deal was the Buccaneers signing Hassan Reddick. And, a guy who wasn't happy after being traded from the Eagles to the New York Jets. There was that long holdout there. Just from a player's perspective, one, what kind of impact does a guy like Hassan Reddick have on that pass rush? And given that it's a 1 year deal, how much added incentive is it for Reddick to go out and ball out, knowing that, hey, that next big contract might be looming if you get that 10, 11 sack type of season this year?
Yeah, Simon Reddick, he's 30 years old right now, and so every moment counts. I think he posted something on his Instagram talking about vengeance, right? Like his comeback year, and so that's really cool to see. And you look at Hassan Reddick's stats. I mean, you look at the Super Bowl in 2023. My man had like two and a half sacks during the Super Bowl, and so he led the league in sacks that year. I think with like 19 and a half, and so to go to the Jets. I think he held out for a little while for contract issues, and then now with the Buccaneers, I think it's we landed on the gold mine, really, right? Was it one person's trash, another man's treasure, and I don't think that athletes are trash in that sense, but just the analogy. The Jets didn't want him, the Eagles didn't want him, but the Buccaneers we want him here, and so I think he'll be able to apply some great pressure on the quarterback, force some fumbles, which he's led the league in at one point as well. And I think about just the Buccaneers defense. I think about players like Shaq Barrett, right? When Shaq Barrett came to the Buccaneers from Denver, I think he was destroying offensive linemen and quarterbacks. And so I think Hassan Reddick is going to have that similar juice when it comes to the Buccaneers defense. And playing in front of a guy like Levante David, he's going to make Hassan Reddick's life a lot easier. And so with the younger defensive back group, I think those guys are going to be happy to play behind Hassan Reddick as well, because the ball is going to have a little bit more lift than normal, right? The quarterback's going to throw the ball in inaccurate positions because of the pressure. And the Buccaneers did a great job last year pressuring the quarterback. So I see a bright future for Hassan Reddick. He's going to have to get used to the heat. I'll say that, Matt. But other than that, it should be a great year for the Bucs defense.
And I want to switch gears to one of your other former teams, the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, they came 13 yards away, a play away from knocking out the Eagles in the divisional round of the playoffs last year. How do they close the gap? Because, I mean, the NFC is loaded, right? You have Philly, you have Washington. If Detroit can stay healthy, if San Francisco can stay healthy in their own division, Arizona is coming on pretty strong. The Falcons are a sleeper team. What do the Rams need to do with the roster they have in place to close that gap and become a legitimate Super Bowl contender?
Yeah, what the Rams did, what I like, similar to the Buccaneers, is they loaded up on defense a little bit. I think just getting a guy like Puna Ford on the defensive line to help out, Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner. I think that's really important. The run game is a big deal, and you look back to that Eagles game. Saquon Barkley is known as a Rams killer now because the way he ran the football against the Rams, and so locking in a linebacker like Nate Lim and to help firm up and lead that defense, I think is really important. And so the Rams did a good job of, like I said, making sure that the defense is strong. Chris Shula is a second-year defensive coordinator as well, and so having that experience of playing against the Super Bowl champions and the Eagles, and I know they were 13 yards away, but at the end of the day, it was a butt whooping. Let's just keep it honest. It was a butt whooping. And so for Chris Shula to get some experience and get some more guys up front to help him out, I think it's going to be a big deal. And then a guy like Jared Verse where he's just getting better. I think he's going to show up for that defense in a great way. And I think, of course, firming up the linebacker position, Nate Landman drafted a linebacker as well, and then make sure the DBs are covering on the back end. And then, hey, hopefully Matthew Stafford stays healthy. That's the other big thing as well, right? I think he had some back issues, so making sure that the offense clicking on all cylinders. Devontae Adams, which is really cool to see. Puka Nakua, Tutu Atwell. So they have a chance, I would say.
You mentioned Jared Verse. He was incredible as a rookie, 4.5 sacks, was somehow even more dominant than that in the Rams' two postseason games. What's his ceiling as a player? And is there a linebacker that maybe you've played with or played against or you've come across in your career that Jared Verse reminds you of in terms of what he could become?
Yeah, Jared Verse, I think just his motor, right? You look at some of his stats. He didn't have, 19 that we just talked about Son Reddick. He didn't have 19 and a half sacks last year as a rookie, right? But what I will say, though, his pressure rate, he was rookie of the year. I think PFF ranked him like top 50 NFL players in the league right now. And so as a rookie, that's a lot to say. I think Teron Armstead got online and was like, hey, he made retiring a lot easier for me, right? Jared Verse coming in as a bully, and he reminds me of just with his motor. He reminds me of like a Nick Bosa, the Bosa brothers, in their motor. It's like no matter where the quarterback is, they're going to use a straight line against the quarterback, and so I think when quarterbacks game plan for Jared Verse now, they're going to have to make sure they chip him because he's the talk of the town when it comes to the Rams, when it comes to the rookies, and that year he had last year. So of course he trained with Aaron Donald, right? He got smoked in the weight room against Aaron Donald, which was funny to see. But it's just cool to see the torch being passed. I know Kobe Turner is a defensive lineman for the Rams too, and he's doing a good job up front or in the interior. But Jared Verse has the opportunity to be one of the best defensive players in the league for the next 5 to 10 years. So, like I said, the motor is like a Bosa brother for me.
Cam, go around the NFL real quick here. Who's the most complete linebacker in the NFL right now? If Cam Lynch is setting down, you got the remote in your hand on a Sunday, you got the Sunday ticket. Who's the linebacker that you're searching out that you want to spend your Sunday watching?
Yeah, I mean, there's two of them. I'm gonna be a little biased because I played at Syracuse and Zaire Franklin. He's led the league in tackles for the past 3 years or so. I think
Total
he
baller. Total baller, Zaire Franklin.
total ball. I don't think he gets as much love as he should. I mean, coming from he's playing at the Colts, and so the Colts are really winning as many games as they should right now. But you think about guys like Zach Bond, who emerged onto the scene for the Eagles, but was kind of behind the curtain a little bit when he played for the Saints, but emerged into the scene for a championship team. And so, if you give a guy like Zaire Franklin a chance on a championship team, we're going to be talking about him a lot more. And another person too is Fred Warner. At the end of the day, I mean, he's an absolute baller. He plays sideline to sideline. He got a major extension recently. And you think about some of the linebackers that have come through of the 49ers, right? You got guys like Dre Greenlaw, right? He's helped elevate the game of some of the guys he's played next to, and so Quan Alexander, for an example, as well. And so a guy like Fred Warner is someone who I want to watch on Sundays, same as Zaire Franklin.
It's been quite a month to be Cam Lynch. No doubt about this. You get inducted into your high school Hall of Fame. You're named to the Syracuse All 21st Century team. What kind of whirlwind has this been like for you? And how amazing does it feel to be recognized by both your alma maters as one of the top athletes, top players, top people to roll through those hallways?
Yeah, it's a blessing. I mean, you talk about rolling through the hallways, and one thing that I want to share with for the Hall of Fame really is like just treat people well because you just never know when it's going to come back around. I don't think you get inducted to a Hall of Fame, you don't get named to lists if you're not a nice person, if you're not a great person, if you're an asshole. And so that's one thing that I want to impress upon people is be great to people. People remember how you treat them, and so doing that, but then also laying down great work. At the end of the day, making plays, and so it's been a dream really this week. I mean, my birthday's coming up next week on August 4th, and so to have all these things stack up and then celebrate for the birthday is going to be quite amazing and quite the dream. And so I'm looking forward to seeing some of my former teammates, seeing the other inductees, at the Hall of Fame and giving them their flowers as well. Because for me, I don't get to where I am now without the people that led the way. And so it's an extreme honor. And then also, too, you talk about the 21st century list at Syracuse. Um, you know, for me, it took a while to actually starting to get on the field, right? I had to play special teams for a while for the first 2 years, of course, start on the blitz packages, and then finally start my junior year. And so to be recognized on that list amongst other great players at Syracuse, like I said, is a dream come true. And so totally grateful for the people who've helped me get there, all the strength coaches, mom, dad, and cousins and aunts who've cheered me on throughout the time. So it's been a true blessing, and I'm excited to go see those folks this week.
Give me the most memorable play from the college career in Syracuse where maybe you realized, all right, I'm not just the starting linebacker or I'm not just the special teamer fighting for defensive reps, but this could be something for me.
Yeah, so it was against Louisville versus Teddy Bridgewater, actually, right? It's like my sophomore year. We go to the Pinstripe Bowl that year, and I'm on the blitz package, so I'm realizing like, hey, in the blitz package, I have to make the most of any opportunity that I get. And so Teddy Bridgewater, Louisville, they were like ranked number 5, I think it was at that time. We ended up beating them, but there was a blitz play where I line up on the outside. I think I'm on the right side, and it's almost like a up and under type of play where I come up from the outside and come in through like the A gap, and I just drill him before he throws the ball. And I'm like, oh man, this is a good feeling, and I can see myself doing this at the next level. So when I see Teddy Bridgewater get drafted and go to the next level, I'm like, hey, I gave Teddy that work, on the field, and so I could see myself going to the next level and making plays. But that was a really good feeling. And then second to that one was Geno Smith. That we played West Virginia in that Pinstripe Bowl. It was snowing, and we forced a safety on them. And so that was an epic experience. They had a great team: Tavon Austin, Stedman Bailey. I mean, they were loaded on the football field. And so just those two plays, getting big hits on professional quarterbacks. Those are my favorite moments at Syracuse.
Awesome stuff, man. And congratulations again. High School Hall of Fame, named to the All 21st Century Syracuse football team. Tremendous accomplishments, tremendous accolades, doing great work off the field in your life after football as well. He's Cam Lynch. Follow him on Instagram, Cameron Lynch 50. Cam, appreciate the time. Really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to talking to you further up the road, my friend.
Thank you for having me, Matt. I appreciate you.
Good stuff there from Cam Lynch. Always great chatting with him. And the fact that he's so involved in the financial industry at this point in his life after football, it's always cool to hear what these guys are building outside the game. And two of his former teams going to be really fun to watch this year. That's for sure.
Absolutely. It is great to hear these guys making that transition to the next step in their lives and doing it, with intentionality and with a sense of joy.
Absolutely. And some joy to be had by us on what's been a really somber day and somber week across the NFL. There is football back this week. There is football with an asterisk as the Hall of Fame game is set for Thursday night. The Fighting Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions against the Mike Tanier's favorite Los Angeles Chargers in the Hall of Fame game in Canton. We won't see, in all likelihood, Justin Herbert. We're probably not going to see Aiden Hutchinson as
Oh,
he works his way back from injury. But two really compelling teams are the top of the depth chart and a lot of fun young players on both of these rosters that we're going to get some quality minutes from, some quality snaps from on Thursday night.
right. We may get 5 or 10 quality minutes out of it. Now I'm going to hold something up, and it will not be a home colonoscopy kit. This is my football season candle
Oh, look at you.
from Bed Bath and Beyond. My son got it for me. Now he has a hard and fast rule: never to buy a candle that doesn't smell like something that they can explain what it smells like. Like no
Okay.
abstract candle. So the candle says sandalwood and cedar, you can buy it. If it says pine cones, you can buy it. If it smells like
Summer breeze.
summer breeze is borderline because you can smell a summer breeze, but like
Yeah.
ambition,
Yeah.
you know, something like that. So football season, but he felt like he wanted to get me a gift, and I appreciate. And it is football season, and that game is coming on Thursday. Couple things to look for. First of all, you mentioned Herbert. Herbert has never in his career thrown a preseason pass.
Interesting. I think that streak's going to continue on Thursday. But before we get to the rest of these, I know you loaded for bear on Justin Herbert and Chargers thoughts, but I want to make a really quick right-handed pivot here.
Uh-huh.
What do you make of the Cincinnati Bengals vowing to play Joe Burrow more in the preseason to avoid slow starts. Because on one hand, that's one theory. Get him reps, get him timing.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll help avoid the slow starts. I don't know if it's the way to avoid sluggish starts to the regular season. I don't know if it's worth the inherent added injury risk. I don't know that there's much to be gained from playing a quarterback of Joe Burrow's caliber in the preseason. Curious your thoughts on Zach Taylor and the Bengals vowing to play Burrow and the starters to avoid the week 1 slump continuing.
One is it's no substitute for getting Trey Hendrickson ready to play. T- Two, I feel like any decision on that regard is the right decision if everyone is comfortable with it and the reasons why. So if Joe Burrow sat down across from Taylor and the guys, and maybe Jamar's in there, and they say we're worried about slow starts, and Burrow says, you know what? If the second preseason game I go out there and I play a half, maybe that can get us our rhythm together, and that sounds like a great idea. They should go for it. The Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes do that.
Yeah.
If Taylor went to Burrow, it's like, well, I'm worried about slow starts, so you got to play, and Burrow's like, I don't really think I've been the problem, dude. It seems like everything else, or the offensive line hasn't been the problem, or whatever. Then you're just flailing, and then in this case, you are taking on an injury risk. But in Herbert's case, Brandon Staley, the previous coach, was very much a no player guys. And when Herbert was a rookie, it was 2020. There was no preseason because of the pandemic. So I went back,
Yeah.
I quadruple checked. He's never thrown a preseason pass. He will not throw one in the Hall of Fame game.
No.
He will be standing on the sidelines chit chatting. Who will be throwing passes? Well, on the Charger side of the ball, Trey Lance is likely to see a lot of playing time. And that's somebody we always watch and find interesting to watch. Like this probably is his last gasp. Somebody we thought was going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers. Little bit of either a prospecting or a looky-loo rubbernecking situation to see if Trey Lance can pull it together. The fourth string quarterback of the Chargers, I'm going to butcher his name, Florida State and Oregon State and Clemson quarterback DJ. I can't even get the last name out. Oyemba. It's a train wreck. This young man was playing in college football since 2019, been in 3 different programs, had his moments. Is kind of like Jameis Winston, but like right after the eye surgery. I mean, I wish the young man the best, but anything can happen when this guy is on the field. It'll be an interesting guy to watch going out there because you don't know what will happen. It's like an unpredictable wrestling jobber. Other side of the ball, talking about guys that like we all had our eyes on in the past, Herndon Hooker.
Yes. Yes. I remember him going into the Senior Bowl, not being able to participate because of the torn ACL. Hendon
Mm-hmm.
Hooker was viewed as a fringe first round prospect coming out of Tennessee based on talent alone, winds up falling into the 3rd round where the Lions get him at number 68. A
Mm-hmm.
guy with a lot of athleticism, big, strong arm. I thought he was kind of a draft and stash potential trade
Yeah.
chip a year down the line where the Lions could deal him and he'd become a starter somewhere. That hasn't played out, but he's a guy I've really been fascinated by since his college career. It'll be interesting to see Hendon Hooker and what he looks like getting some reps and some snaps in the Hall of Fame game.
And what's curious right now is it sounds like Kyle Allen of all people is ahead of him on the depth chart. Now, again, he was a draft and stash initially. We're in year 3, I believe. He should be at the point where it's like, well, now I've established myself as the backup to Jared Goff, and like maybe I am stuck in that situation, but I should not be fighting for the number 2 job. Sounds like he's like
Right.
the number 2 job. Again, he's somebody I really liked, coming out. I want to see what he can do, and that's going to keep me watching all these interesting backup quarterbacks, plus some other rookies like Omarion Hampton, who we might not see, but who knows, are going to keep me watching the Hall of Fame game, possibly through halftime. Who knows?
Yeah. And we get to see what the Lions defense is going to look like this year because all their starters tend to get hurt, right? So we get to see, in August, the defense that will be coming to Motown in November.
Right. All the guys who are out there in November because everybody's already hurt will be playing, and we might as well get to know some of their names so I'm not tripping over them like I'm tripping over the name of that Chargers quarterback.
Absolutely. So football is back. You get a game on Thursday night. I'm excited about it. The preseason is here. The training camp tour kicks off
Yes.
Thursday morning in East Rutherford. So I'm looking forward to that. Stopping in on the Giants. A lot of buzz around the Giants' young players, around Abdul Carter, around Malik Neighbors taking a big step, around
Ataboo. Scatterboo.
Scatterboo looks unstoppable, untackleable. Marshawn Lynchian in some of
Yes.
the videos that I see emerging from me throughout the farm. I'm excited to get eyeballs on him. We'll be going live at some point after practice. That'll be a lot of fun. Some content
Yes.
coming out of there. Saturday, I'll be in Ashburn, Virginia with the Washington Commanders. And then next week, Latrobe for the Steelers. It's a fun time of year. Football's back, baby.
I am jealous once again. I'm glad you get to go to Ashburn, not Richmond. Richmond is actually like a nicer city. Ashburn is not actually a place; it's just an airport. But Richmond was a nicer city. But man, that drive. Ugh. But I'm jealous you get to do this tour. But I get to live vicariously through you.
Exactly. It should be a lot of fun. What do we have coming up on the Two Deep Zone over the next couple weeks?
Well, I do have a camp roundup, and we're waiting for the camp news to percolate, and I'll be putting it into my Two Deep Zone on tomorrow, I think.
Nice.
Thursday, the Falcons' signature moments of Falcons history. And I talked about last week. Promise not to be too mean, promise not to dwell too much on the negative, on the 28-3-ness of it all. But that's coming up. And then on Monday, the preseason viewing guide. I don't count the Hall of Fame game into the preseason viewing guide. It's in its own little world. But I'll be telling you which teams, if you are inclined to put on NFL Network or NFL Plus and watch preseason games, which teams are going to be fun to watch, bring out storylines, rookies, third string quarterbacks who are wacky, other things like that to look for.
Oh, I can't wait. And speaking of the Atlanta Falcons, I want to give a plug to our friend, our guy Tyler Dunn over at
Oh gosh,
Go
yes.
Long. Tremendous long form feature on the rise of these Atlanta Falcons and Michael Penix's breakout case and
Mhm.
Drake London as the unheralded number one wide receiver that isn't being talked about enough in NFL circles.
Yes.
Really great, thorough read as we've come to expect from a guy like Tyler. I really enjoyed it. I think people will really dig it as well.
Yeah, Falcons fans definitely, because you get really deep on Drake London. Like you really get to see what makes this guy tick. Informative, because I don't know much about him. Drake London does not get a lot of ink. We don't kind of know what sort of competitor he is, like how he came through the ranks. It's a heck of a story.
Absolutely. And if you're a fan of the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Check us out on YouTube at my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975. And if you enjoyed the show and you subscribe on Apple, please go ahead and leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you like about the podcast. If you want to rip us, go ahead and rip us. We'll read them on the air next week. But those ratings and reviews, both on YouTube and on Apple, really help grow the show. They help push us up the algorithm, make us easier to find, and help us get some of those marquee guests to come through because they'll know what the Between the Hatchmarks podcast actually is. But more importantly, subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack. Mike Tanier's very unique blend of dad jokes, humor, superhero references, and some of the deepest analytical football analysis you'll find anywhere, all in one place. It's mandatory reading every week. It's a one-stop shop for me. And if you like my blend of insider reporting and features, check out Between the Hashmarks on Substack as well. Mike, football is back. We'll have a game to break down next week and some other games to look ahead to.
We'll have some games to break down, so we won't be super serious, hopefully, about the issues, news cycle worthy, because you know what, man? Football's back.
So what's the candle smell like anyway? Well, you haven't lit it up yet. What do we got? What do we got?
Folks on the internet know I have lit the candle. Oh my God, it's like a Philly cheesesteak and an IPA. It's like, no, just kidding. It's just like pumpkin spice crap.
I was going to say I need to go out and get one.
It's right. It's Bed Bath and Beyond. It's not hard to find. Coming soon to
He's
a
Mike
mall near
Tanner.
you.
He's Mike Tanner. We'll talk to you next week.